review of my 2016 V6 Mustang. Obviously, it's just kind of a stock, since that's all kind of they offer right now at Ford is the base model on the V6. No premium upgrades that you could really do to it. First thing you might notice is that my wheels are different from the stock V6 wheels, and that's just because I bought some pretty cheapy used GT wheels off of Craigslist there. They are 18-inch. They generally come on the EcoBoost or the GT that I've seen them on. So they look pretty nice, and it doesn't give my car away dead on stating, hey, I'm a V6. One thing that does do that, if you guys haven't been aware of it, just these emblems here, for example, this is specific to the V6. The EcoBoost is just going to have the pony, and the GT is obviously going to say GT, and anything above that is unbeknownst to me. But that's kind of a dead giveaway, and I kind of don't really like it too much that it states like, hey, this is the base model car. Not so much that it's a V6, but just that it's the base car. It kind of states like, oh, this is all I could get. From the front end, you can't really tell any difference. Obviously, on the wheels, you would generally be able to tell a difference, but I changed them. One of the first things I did to the car when I got it was get some tint on it, which I think looks really good. Regretting the fact that I got the car in black, because I do live out in a kind of deserty area, so there's a lot of dust. Gets dirty pretty fast, but it is one of the only ones that they had in a manual transmission, which was a big thing for me. I know the majority of people would tell you nowadays with the better technology and the automatic transmission, they can go to from 0 to 60 faster because it's just a quicker shift. But I do appreciate the manual. I feel like it gives you more control of the car. Not to mention, it's fun to drive. It really just adds a whole different dimension to the vehicle. With the 2016 front end, my lights, I switched out my lights, if you can't tell, to some Diode Dynamics LED switchback, sorry. So as you can see, they're generally hyper white. If you put your turn signal on or lock them, they turn orange just for that, and then they switch right back to the white, which I really liked. Just kind of adds a little bit more like a fog light look to the car. Other than that, the only other upgrade I've actually done for the majority part has been the cold air intake I put on by Roush, which is pretty nice. It adds a good deep sound to the takeoff, or to anything on when you actually get into it, when you dig into it, get into your higher revs. It gives a very deep sound in comparison just to the standard V6. So I do recommend it. It was about $400. This is off Amazon is where I got it, in about a 15 to 20 minute upgrade. Really do recommend it. Other than that, everything's stock exhaust, which is the next thing I plan to do, just for the sound aspect, obviously, since it doesn't really do too much for you performance-wise. Back seats, obviously, if you haven't seen them yet, real small back there. Cloth seats, because that's the only option I have on the V6. Also the little center console right here, you would have generally your backup camera, and your display for your music and radio stations and stuff, as opposed to the big touchscreen display which would come on any premium model. Other than that, I mean, the majority of the interior is similar to anything you would see in the EcoBoost or the GT, minus that and some different, slightly different gauges down, or buttons down here. You have the little chrome pieces down here. The majority of the interior is leather and this kind of fake carbon fiber. Other than that, got some, all-weather floor mats just to kind of keep it cleaner for a little bit. I also got the trunk one. These obviously aren't factory for Ford, but they were pretty cheap for aftermarket. But they work really good. I mean, it's been kind of rainy out lately with the El Nino out here in California. Not too bad, but enough to where it's easy to track mud on your carpets and different things like that. Other than that, I mean, got your little thing right here for your shades. You got your push to start that comes standard. You got your your options to control your your radio, your back and forth, your cruise control down here. It's all basic. I like the manual transmission. In reverse, you just pull up, split, go forward, and then you have your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The audio in here is pretty good. I know they have the premium models that come with the little speaker boost. This one actually, you know, it sounds pretty good despite that it doesn't have the actual kicker on the back. But that's pretty much the inside. It's pretty general. I never understood why the V6 ones were so general. It's just because there's not really much to show. You know, there's really not much to show. I mean, it is a nice interior for what you're paying. This one was MSRP about $23. So for the fact that it's that, you know, this definitely does, to me, come across as a more expensive car than that. Just a little general idea of what the V6 Mustang runs like. I mean, in comparison to the GT, which I haven't driven, I think it's you know, obviously going to be less powerful, but it's definitely powerful enough for a daily driver, especially if you're trying to just, you know, if you have a bit of a commute and you're not trying to be spending an arm and a leg in gas. This is definitely the better route to go, I think. A lot of people would argue with me, a lot of purists who prefer themselves a V8, which is fine, but it's like, okay, yeah, you know, it's way more powerful, but in honesty, the amount of times you're going to actually be able to use that amount of power, you know, in the streets, it's going to be limited to, you know, if at all, unless you're, you know, really risking it and possibly getting ready to get a ticket, which I'm not really trying to do, you know, because my job wouldn't allow me having tickets on my license. But just in general for this car, I mean, it does pretty good. It does a good 0 to 60 in something like 6 seconds, which is definitely a good get up and go if you're trying to, you know, get onto the freeway and match the speed of traffic, or if you're trying to get ahead of somebody, you'll definitely be able to do that. With this manual transmission, it's a little clunky. The clutch is a little deep, a little bit deeper than my previous car that was also a manual. But definitely once you get used to it, you realize you don't have to go all the way in to get that good shift out of it. So, you know, that's something that you kind of work with. It is a little stiff either way, but something you get used to. Give you guys kind of a good sound or a good, see if I can open it up, just give you guys a good example of what the cold air intake sounds like, because that's pretty much what you're going to hear. The engine just doesn't sound the same at all, so I can't even really say that, oh, well, this is what the standard V6 is going to sound like. But it is what, you know, with a small little upgrade, you know, it is going to make a big difference. So I definitely recommend it if you're in the V6, or if you're in the 4-cylinder or the V8, you know. I know a lot of people say that the cold air intake doesn't really do much as far as performance either. Some people say that it does when it's naturally aspirated. Some people say it doesn't if it has a turbo. So it kind of just depends. Open it up real quick. Really like the fact that they added a 6th gear. It really does help with fuel economy in these cars. I mean, because in all honesty, all the first 5 gears are geared pretty aggressively. You have a pretty, you know, sudden drop, and then you're back up in your RPMs relatively quickly. It's just in your 6th gear, it drops a bit. It probably drops a good about 1,000 RPM. So if you're in, you know, 4,000, it'll drop you to 3, which is awesome if you're, you know, if you're on the freeway and you're doing 70 miles an hour, you can be at 1,900 RPMs, which, you know, makes this car get anywhere between, you know, 35 to 40 miles per gallon, you know, if you're doing that kind of RPMs. on a flat surface, obviously.